Jamaica held the first political debate ahead of the general elections. Galveston County in the United States has issued mandatory evacuations for the arrival of Hurricane Laura. Tripartite summit among Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq was held in Amman amid strengthened political and economic relations. Tripartite summit among Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq was held in Amman, aiming to strengthen political and economic relations. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. Jamaica held on Tuesday for the first political debate ahead of the general elections on September 3rd. During the debate, the People's National Party and the Jamaica Labour Party met to discuss and debate on social issues. During the event, they addressed the COVID-19 effects in the Jamaican population, mainly in matters of job losses and school activities established. Representatives of the ruling Labour Party pointed out that achievements made during its governance, such as the creation of over 100,000 jobs and a poverty decline of 40%. Meanwhile, representatives of the People's National Party standed to say that they will battle corruption within the current political system that they say have prevented Jamaicans of a better quality of life. And we begin in Latin America, where business and economic sectors are pressuring national authorities to reopen economies, despite the region reporting the highest daily numbers of COVID-19 cases. El Salvador reactivated its economy on Monday after over 100 days of lockdown, in the midst of a clash between the executive that intended to implement a phase of reopening and the Supreme Court, which declared the move unconstitutional. Meanwhile, although Colombia reported over 10,500 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours, President Iván Duque has announced the lifting of the mandatory lockdown across the country starting on September 1st. In Ecuador, which began easing COVID-19 restrictions measures in June, authorities continue to promote tourism activities in the cities of Guayaquil and Quito, despite being the COVID-19 hotspots of the country. Meanwhile, representatives of the so-called Lima Group, made up of right-wing Latin American governments, have vowed to hold a forum to address the post-COVID-19 economic recovery. World Tourism Organization officials have noted that 100 to 120 million directed tourism jobs are at risk due to the novel coronavirus pandemic. Launching his latest policy brief on tourism, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres stressed that due to the unprecedented shutdown of global travel and trade, tourism may be the sector worst affected by the coronavirus. He pointed out that the industry employs 1 in every 10 people on Earth and provides livelihoods to hundreds of millions more. The brief notes that international tourist arrivals fell by more than half of the first 5 months of this year, and around $320 billion in tourism exports were lost. Meanwhile, the UN Conference on Trade and Development forecasts a loss of 1.5 to 2.8% of global GDP, and the UN Secretary-General called to rebuild the tourism sector in a safe, equitable, and climate-friendly way. On Tuesday, the director of the Pan American Health Organization addressed the increase in COVID-19 cases in the Americas, while noting that younger people are by and large driving the spread of the virus in the region.
In the past 6 weeks, deaths in our region have doubled, and the number of new COVID-19 infections reported has more than doubled, rising from 5.3 million on July 1st to almost 12 million cases today. Data trending in that direction typically signals an urgent need to implement public health measures to slow the spread of COVID-19, such as social distancing, sheltering in place, and limits on public gatherings. indicates that younger people are primarily driving the spread of the disease in our region.
Engineers from Columbia's University of La Sabana have developed domestically made ventilators to help coronavirus patients. The machines look like many other ventilators used to treat COVID-19 patients, with a screen atop of metallic box that displays the amount of oxygen being pumped into person's lungs and a plastic tube to deliver it to the patient. Engineers hope to recently started emergency deployment of the ventilators can save hundreds of lives and make Colombia a pioneer in low-cost equipment for COVID-19 patients. The ventilators haven't yet received full approval from Colombian regulators, but a new law allows doctors to use them if their hospital has run out of conventional machines and they have the consent of patients or their relatives.
We have already taken ventilators to 2 hospitals in Bogotá, to the Pneumology Foundation and the clinic at the University of La Sabana. Our goal now is to see how we can expand this project and take it to all corners of Colombia. We want to see if the ventilators work in cities located at different altitudes. If that works, these ventilators will be ready for use around the world. Commercial ventilators run with complex software, which tells the machines how much oxygen to pump into patients' lungs. Our ventilators don't work like that. These are mechanical ventilators, which work with levers that allow specialists to adjust the amount of oxygen. Then that is reflected on the screen. That's what makes our units so much cheaper.
Demonstrations were seen in Costa Rica's capital, San Jose, on Tuesday, demanding the government undertake reforms in order to face the COVID-19 triggered economic crisis. Dozens of rural and transport workers, business owners, and representatives of the fishery industry gathered in front of the presidential palace, voicing a series of demands including the end of restrictions on the movement of vehicles, the strengthening of anti-corruption laws, and improvements in the Social Security Fund, which manages the country's public health system. Costa Rican health authorities have reported over 35,000 coronavirus cases and 376 fatalities since the outbreak of the pandemic in the country.
We are fighting against all those nefarious policies that the government of Carlos Alvarado and his henchmen are carrying out.
Today what we want is a government that governs for all people, not for the transnational corporations. We are here fighting because of that and because of the shortage of work. There is a lot of unemployment in our territory because they have made us afraid with this coronavirus.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In the state of Texas, United States, Galveston County has issued mandatory evacuations for portions of Galveston and Bolivar Peninsula ahead of the arrival tomorrow of Hurricane Laura. Bolivar Peninsula expects storm surges of 5 to 8 feet. More mandatory evacuations were expected to be issued for other cities. Hurricane Laura approached Tuesday on the 3-year anniversary of Hurricane Harvey, making landfall with Category 4 strength in Texas. Laura is expected to arrive tomorrow night as a Category 3 hurricane. Mass evacuations along the coast also began another test of the state's handling of the coronavirus, which clobbered Texas this summer and has resulted in more than 11,000 deaths. Police fired tear gas and rubber bullets at demonstrators in the U.S. city of Kenosha on Monday night as they protested the shooting by a police officer of Jacob Blake. According to Blake's father, his son was paralyzed from the waist down after being shot in the back 8 times in front of his children on Sunday. A crowd of protesters gathered for the second night in a row on Monday near the Kenosha County Courthouse building to express their rejection of the latest example of police brutality and systemic racism in the U.S. Governor of the state of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, who denounced the shooting, announced the deployment of 125 members of the National Guard on Monday, with responsibility for guarding infrastructure. And hundreds of protesters marched down Manhattan's Fifth Avenue in New York on Monday night to voice their condemnation of the police attack on Jacob Blade in the state of Wisconsin. Demonstrators called for the resignation of President Donald Trump as well as Vice President Mike Pence due to their repressive policies. United States First Lady Melania Trump is set to address the Republican National Convention last Tuesday as her husband continues to delve behind the polls. The First Lady is set to offer remarks shortly from the historic White House Rose Garden 4 years after her first big convention speech was criticized for its striking similarities to Michelle Obama's 2008 convention address. Melania is expected to appeal to women voters with a speech reflecting on her work with children, her Be Best initiative, and some of her favorite moments of the past 3.5 years as she makes the case that her husband should be re-elected. Vice President Mike Pence made his first convention appearance of the night in a pre-recorded video taped at Abraham Lincoln's childhood home, in which he delivered a tribute to Lincoln and spoke to 6 Americans who said their lives had been positively impacted by the Trump administration. Demonstrators gathered in front of the Home Office building in the capital of United Kingdom, London, this Tuesday to protest the anti-migrant rhetoric of the British government and the announced measures to curb the arrivals of asylum seekers across the English Channel.
Lots of these immigrants are fleeing from war, are fleeing because of their sexuality, are fleeing because of the discrimination, are fleeing because of many different reasons. And to actually come here and to fight all obstacles, including their life they put in at risk. Some have not been fortunate to make it, but to come here and to make a better life. But the government are making it harder for them to come here. This is appalling. This is not right. This is inhumane.
It's ridiculous. We're a wealthy country, we can help people, and Britain created half the problems that they're fleeing from anyway. It's just really heartbreaking. I don't know where the compassion is.
In Belarus, supporters of re-elected President Alexander Lukashenko gathered to reject the calls of the opposition for new elections. Supporters concentrated near the well-known Komarovsky market in the capital Minsk. They rejected what they consider is the interference of Western countries in the recent violent demonstrations that seek to delegitimate and ignore the results of the last presidential elections. The European leader, with more years of service in the presidency of his country, accused NATO troops of raids near its borders. In Spain, a demonstration took place in Barcelona in front of the local soccer stadium as fans of the Barcelona club expressed their displeasure with the team leadership, demanding that the Argentine star Lionel Messi stay in the team. Club fans gathered Tuesday evening at club headquarters to demand the resignation of President Josep Bartomeu, in turn expressing their desire for the Argentine star to remain in the Catalan entity. Club Barcelona spokesperson confirmed Lionel Messi's request to retire from the Blaugrana team 11 days after the big defeat against Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Two-party summit among Jordan, Egypt and Iraq was held on Tuesday in Amman, aiming to strengthen political and economic relations among these nations. The meeting was attended by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah and Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi. They discussed several issues on common interest. Authorities took the opportunity to call for intensified efforts to find a political solution to the situation in Syria, Libya and Yemen. The meeting also aimed coordinations of strategies to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and establish actions to ensure food security in the region. Hundreds of protesters took the streets in Libya's capital Tripoli for a third day in a row this Tuesday to denounce deteriorating living conditions and corruption amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Demonstrators gathered at the Martyrs Square expressing indignation over extended shortages of power, water and fuel, as well as the current activities of the authorities. Protests have also grown in the neighboring Libyan city of Misrata, despite the head of the UN-recognized Government of National Accord, FtS al-Sarraj, announcing an adjustment to his cabinet in a bid to quell the protests. The mobilizations come days after the announcement of a ceasefire between the warring parties in the country and the holding of general elections in 2021.
There is no electricity, no water, the cost of living is high. There are no salaries, but there are intruders in our country because members of the former regime and Haftar's henchmen are present in all institutions.
Today we called for the reform and improvement of the living conditions of the Libyan people, the cleansing of government institutions from the corrupted, as well as the expulsion of the Wagner Group mercenaries from the oil fields and the expulsion of all mercenaries in Libya.
According to the latest update on COVID-19 figures reported the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the African continent has now surpassed 1.2 million confirmed cases and over 28,000 fatalities. Southern Africa is the most affected region in the continent, with over 652,000 cases and more than 14,000 deaths. Meanwhile, South Africa continues to be the worst hit country in the continent based on official figures, with more than 600,000 cases, followed by Egypt with over 97,000 cases and Morocco with over 54,000. On a positive note, over 932,000 people have recovered from the virus. Kenyan health authorities confirmed 246 new COVID-19 cases on Tuesday, pushing the total number to almost 33,000.
Today, we have 246 people who have tested positive for COVID-19 following testing of 4,149 samples over the last 24 hours. Our cumulative number of confirmed cases now stands at 32,803. And the cumulative number of tests that we have conducted thus far stands at 429,513.
Following an official meeting with the British Foreign Secretary on Tuesday, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas stressed that peace with Israel can only be achieved based on international law and the Arab Peace Initiative. He also urged the UK to recognize the state of Palestine.
We say that it is time for Britain to recognize the state of Palestine, which will help achieve justice, inspire hope, and establish the two-state solution based on the 1967 borders for Palestine and Israel to live in peace and security. Peace will not come by bypassing the Palestinians, by normalizing the Arab countries, and it will not be achieved through an illusion of peace for peace, but rather will be done on the basis of international law and the Arab Peace Initiative.
Our commitment to the Palestinian people, our commitment to a two-state solution, the United Kingdom's opposition to annexation of territory, and above all, we want to see the improvement of the lives of the Palestinian people, which can only be secured through a lasting peace negotiated between Israel and the Palestinians.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Laura Palmeiro. Thank you for watching.